photographs or it didn't happen. That's what they say, the young people. So I'm just getting this to send to New York to our publisher, Jacob Swannian.
Hey, Julian, Jacob, Robert.
We can edit that.
Don't
Thank you.
send it to Julian.
You
Send it to New Jersey, you might get there.
I'll say New York, isn't it? Sagging meniscus. This is an in-joke, if you happen to know. Sagging Meniscus Press is not a medical condition. It's the name of a preeminent New York independent publisher run by Jacob Swannian, a good, great and generous publisher. And what connects everyone here, on the contributor side at least, is the press. And a quarterly magazine called Exacting Clam, more of that later. We've all, in one way or another, appeared in that magazine or have books published by Sagging Meniscus Press, some of which are for sale upstairs at discounted prices. My name is David Collard, but that's enough about me. I'm here to introduce the first of four supremely talented writers, all very different, but connected, as I say, by a press, and I think by certain shared interests and virtuosities. And the first is my friend Melissa McCarthy, who is here from Edinburgh. She travelled down today. I'm just going to say a short thing about her first Sagging Meniscus Press publication called Photo, Phyto, Proto, Nitro. I'm going to write that down. Photo, yeah. 4 dazzling essays about images and destruction and flowers and invention. Whatever she looks at leaps freshly from the page. It's a book I kept by my bedside for 3 months because it kept giving. I kept having to go back and check whether I'd really read what she'd said about things that had never occurred to me before. Chris Rose, who last week won the Goldsmith Prize, a novelist, said of her book, incredibly sharp, wide-ranging, a well-informed mind. And she's here to share a bit of it with us while I pass out some supporting materials. Is that right? Thank you.
Hello, am I the right height?
Use the
Big one, yes.
These are one between 2, by the way.
Hello. Okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much, David. Just pass them around. It's supplementary. It's just something to look at if you get bored when I'm chatting. Thank you to David. Thank you to Rufo, who I think is the motivating force for the whole evening. And it's a great pleasure to see so many people in real life as opposed to on the screen. As David said, I'll be reading from my 2023 book, Photo, Phyto, Proto, Nitro. The title of the book and the organising structure behind it derives from these 4 prefixes. There's photo, to do with light and a moving image, any image. Phyto means relating to plants or flowers or things that grow. There's proto, relating to the first or the original of anything. And nitro means it blows up. In the book I look a lot at photography, a little bit about sharks, and I discuss some of my favourite books. The extract I'm going to read now includes a paragraph from this lovely book, Digging Up the Past by Leonard Woolley, who was a superstar archaeologist of the 1930s. Before then, I start by considering this book. It's Hiroshima by John Hersey. I just wanted to share a little bit of the back cover notes. It says on the back, he dresses his tall, wiry figure with conservative care, always looking well-groomed and polished. His quiet, earnest, friendly manner and good looks make it seem as if nature has been uncommonly generous with him. He has far more than his quota of good and faithful friends scattered across the American continent and in the remote lands of his journeys. So if anybody's got a book coming out soon, really, we need to raise our game, because it's a lovely thing to have on your back cover. But I'll start by reading from my book. The text you've got there is just if you want to look at it when I'm talking about that bit, but it's not essential. I'd picked up Hersey's book in the second-hand bookshop. hoping that it might contain information on an aspect of the story that I was vaguely aware of. This is the idea that the bomb blast had caused some sort of photographic imaging onto the very concrete of the city, that a shadow puppet picture of Hiroshima at the moment of its annihilation remained. And his book does mention this, but not exactly as I expected. Hersey explains that the story I was looking for was just that, an urban, or urban destruction, myth. The bomb had indeed been so bright that in some places it had illuminated an object, and at the same time caused the shadow that this object cast to remain marked on the ground. He says, a few vague human silhouettes were found, and these gave rise to stories that eventually included fancy and precise details, such as that a shadow image persisted fixed onto a wall, of a painter dripping his brush into a paint can, or the dark outline of a cartman about to whip his horse. But these are just one story or another, says Hersey. It's not as true as had been rumoured that the atom bomb inflicted this uncanny form of photography. There's a gap between the story of the image and the real markings made by light. John Hersey gives more credence to another form of marking, though, when he describes some of the dreadful injuries among survivors. He says, the burns had made patterns of undershirt straps and suspenders, and on the skin of some women, since white repelled the heat from the bomb, and dark clothes absorbed it and conducted it onto the skin, on the skin of some women, the shapes of flowers that they had had on their kimonos. Hersey's book is shocking not just in these awful details, but by his very calmness, his ability to tell the story in measured, sober words. This happened. These people made it through that day and the subsequent ones. They could tell their accounts. Life went on. And we keep reading. The setting, the city, begins its regrowth immediately, as Hersey reports. Weeds already hid the ashes, and wildflowers were in bloom among the city's bones. Everywhere were bluets and Spanish bayonets, goosefoot, morning glories and daylilies, the hairy fruited bean, purslane and clotbur, and sesame and panic grass and feverfew. It actually seemed as if a load of sickle thinner seed had been dropped along with the bomb. With this destruction and strange flowering, Hersey is in a good literary tradition. Aeschylus, in his Agamemnon, written in the 5th century BC, has the sea flowering with the corpses of men. So what's this war reportage that Aeschylus is making an artwork out of? What's the story there? Well, the Greeks have won the war at Troy at last, by means of their secret innovative equipment, and they can finally leave the war zone. Agamemnon, who's king of Argos and leader of all the Greeks, is coming home, preceded by a herald who brings the news. The audience, that's us, sees this herald telling the Argive chorus that although Agamemnon is indeed just on his way, there were some problems for the rest of his army. And many of them, after enduring all of the troubles at Troy, were nonetheless drowned in a huge storm which struck the returning flotilla. The herald's own ship survived, and in the morning he surveyed the damage. He reports on this in a sentence that's been variously translated over the last couple of 100 years. It's what I've printed out if any of you are Greek experts or just want to follow what I'm saying. But I'll tell you 4 different versions of the translation. There's J.S. Blackie from 1850, who says, "And when the shining sun shone forth again, we see the Aegean tide strewn with the purple blossoms of the dead and wrecks of shattered ships." Or there's Robert Browning from 1889. He translates it, "And when returned the brilliant light of Helios, we view the Aegean Sea on flower with corpses of men Achaean, and with naval ravage. From Anna Swanwick in 1886, there's "And when uprose the sun's fair light, behold, the Aegean Sea with flowerage overstrewn, corpses of Grecian men and wrecks of ships." And there's Philip Vellicott from 1956. He translates it, "The bright sun beamed. We saw the Aegean flowering thick with faces of dead Greeks and scraps of wrecks." Well, because this one sentence has such imagery in it and such translations, I went to look at the original Greek text, which you've got here. There are two particular words from the lines that interest me. There's anthun, which means flourishing, and is the word that tells what state the Aegean Sea was in. And there's another word, erapios, meaning wreckages, one of the items connected to this flourishing. It takes a little bit of construing here, but just cling on to the ideas of anthun and erapios, flowering and wrecks, as I'll be returning to those. The skeleton, the framework of the sentence is, "In the morning light, we saw the Aegean Sea." In the morning, we saw the sea. It's really simple. What was the sea doing? It was anthun, it was flourishing or abounding. And it was abounding with two things, wreckages, erapios, of a nautical sort, and corpses, necrois. Corpses are easy. Wreckage is rather more complex. Erapios, the wreckages, is a form of the noun that means a fallen ruin or a wreck. And it derives from the verb erapo, which has a broader set of meanings. It can be an active verb, to throw or dash something down, to cast something down. Or it can be passive, for a wall to be thrown down, or for thunder to be hurled down by Zeus. Then it can be an intransitive verb with no object, particularly in Homer's Iliad. A warrior falls to his knees. A tree falls from its root. There are no cases in the lexicon about flowers scattering and falling, ruined from the tree. Thinking of a Japanese haiku school of poetry, one might expect to see fallen petals as a sign of mortality, but that doesn't seem to happen in the Greek. So the implications of erapo, verb and associated noun, are of ruins that are less delicate than blossoms. Fallen buildings, or wrecked soldiers, or blasted trees. And all of these types of ruin can be found, they coincide in the flotsam described by Agamemnon's herald. Flotsam is wreckage found floating, while jetsam is goods that's been tossed overboard. The herald's talking about planks, which were trees before their felling, and then there were the dwellings and the vehicles of men, and now they're broken, cast down bits next to the corpses. The word, along with the scene that the herald describes, is a confluence of references and allusions. Then the straightforward meaning of the herald's word anthun, the other word that I really liked, is that the sea was blooming. It's the participle of the verb meaning to blossom or to bloom, to be bright. So what is the herald describing? It's an expanse of water with dead bodies rising up all over the surface, in the same way that flowers poke up their colourful heads all over a meadow. But strangely, it's a word that's also used of the youthful beard, referring, I guess, to how new stubble pokes through the skin of a man's face, and to the bloom of youth. All ideas of freshness and new growth, a pretty appearance that attests to health and attractiveness, vitality. In a slightly less concrete sense, the verb anteo also means to flourish or thrive, to be at the pitch or the full extent. So the Dedicaeans, the Greeks, are some of them young men who are finally victorious in Troy. They're flourishing, until a sudden reversal of fortune. Then they rebloom like flowers in this awful necronautical inversion of the metaphor. It's a dense sentence from Aeschylus's Herald, but a good one, moving in word order from morning to we saw to blossoming to Rex. It ends on a downer. And this is something I'm going to trace in my book. Newness, vision, flowers, blasted trees. Proto, photo, phyto, nitro. 2 minutes more, shall I stop? Oh, hold on then.
No, don't stop.
So then I skip a bit and move on to talk about Leonard Woolley, the archaeologist, for a local connection here. In his generalist book, Digging Up the Past of 1930, Leonard Woolley gives a brief overview as to the why and the how of archaeology. And he explains that sudden destruction, as from a conveniently adjacent volcano, or failing that from sacking and burning and looting, he says all of that is good because it preserves so well. There's also much to learn from slower methods, the gradual accretion of time and rubbish and land. Even if people take no deliberate action towards a site, it will not remain as it was. Byproducts or side results of or other human activity will still have an impact, and nature will do its thing too. Plants and flowers in particular carry out this work of preserving, and Leonard Woolley gives the example of a central London site. He says, I remember how when the LCC, the London County Council, the LCC cleared the slum area where Bush House stands today, the heaps of broken brickwork and loose mortar were in the following year entirely hidden by a mass of purple willow herb. And people used to take bus rides down the Strand, just for the pleasure of looking over the high hoardings at this miracle of wild flowers. That happened in the space of a few months. Had the island site been left undisturbed for as many years, coarse turf would have covered the mounds, and the ruins would have covered the mounds, and the ruins of Booksellers' Row would have been buried like those of Silchester. And if this can happen in the heart of London, how much more so in the country, where nature fights at close range? And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was absolutely mesmerising, and that's a fraction of the most marvellous collection of precision-engineered prose. They say you never get a second chance to make a first impression, so if I can just backtrack 20 minutes, say thank you all for coming. On a cold November night. Thanks to the Poetry Society for hosting us, and thanks to Mary here, who's the organiser and made it possible. Thank you. And to the contributors who have made their way here under their own steam and voluntarily to share some thoughts with you. Now, our second performer is Rufo Quintavalle. Now, he lives and works in Paris, but is over for a few days, and tomorrow night will be presenting a screening at the Nickel Cinema in Clerkenwell of Pasolini's Sarlo, a film in which Rufo's father appears in a major role. It's the 50th anniversary, I believe, both of the director's death and of the film's release. So he's here for that tomorrow, but he's here tonight as an actor and a poet, the author of numerous volumes of poetry, including his debut collection, which I brought along as a fanboy this evening, which he signed for, Weather Derivatives. And he's here to read, I haven't got the order right. Philip, you look as though you're about to leap onto stage. No, thank you. Thanks for that. Rufo Quintavalle then will be reading from his Sagging Meniscus volume, Shelf.
Thanks very much, David, and thanks everyone, and thank you, Jacob, who runs the press, for bringing us all together and for allowing us to be published and to exist in the world and to exist on paper. This book, Shelf, is a kind of slightly mad project that took me a very long time to write. I took Walt Whitman's poem Song of Myself, kept the first and last letter of every line, removed the middle, and then rewrote it line by line. Whitman himself rewrote his own poems during his life and tended to make them longer and longer and longer. The lines sort of grew. I did one sort of final rewrite of Song of Myself and made the lines way, way shorter. So yeah, Shelf is my kind of Whitman tribute album. It took a long time to publish it, and then it took a long time to find a publisher. So I'm really, really grateful to Jacob who took a chance on it, and he happens to be based in New Jersey, where Whitman lived in the last decade or so of his life. I'm grateful too to someone else who encouraged me and gave me support during the writing process. A friend of mine, Ian Monk, who sadly passed away in September. Ian was a real source of encouragement and help to me. A brilliant writer and translator. He's translated the entire book into French, respecting the same formal constraint. He's no longer with us, but I'd like to kind of dedicate this reading to him. Interior, residual, the voice that troubles me, wakes me. I eat and still stay thin, and in the night the floorboards moan. An interstitial, living noise, which is to me my cradle song and torment. How much will you put in, it implores. What purpose, this bottomless gut? None I know of, I guess. So stop. I can't. Sleepy, I cross the hall to wash. Endless. It is endless the impetus to get, endless the struggle to have, endless too the letting go forever. Explain me that voice, figure me how much sausage meat it takes precisely to stuff a courgette or chayote. Yesterday's sun is inherent in the Christophine. What can I possibly add? Cilantro and borage, dandelion and yuzu, sunlight's subjects, sunlight's lovely things, her time and again bravura. I contribute nothing, dice and toss. Phytoplankton exist, and hence the bivalves. I, though am distant, so almost incidentally stood in this room, it is as if I am not am, but also. Wide-eyed meerkats peer at me from the TV set. I stare at them back and take them in. Documentary drip feed. If you are with me so far, stay with me one more evening, please. The place I am at tonight augurs madness. The window will shiver. The vacancy press against the bedroom wall. Eggs and coffee and the pointilliste artillery of sparrows has chivied February into April. Tits trill. It is a fecund, uncut morning, hefty and fun, folkloric. There are masks, there are maypoles, there is every human going on that joins in and is Yule giving into spring. Life's a shitty, thin affair, without a dash of the manic depressive, without, that is, imagination, to see and double the spring. Now I am naked again, omnipotent, underwriting each thing's unlikely thisness with my own appropriate artistry. Once taciturn, now prolix, I guarantee reality. Blossoms turn to mushroom clouds, vessels into boundless vistas, various, drunken, and of a piece, an afternoon of lager, angel dust, and fog. This vision will vanish. They all do. But I passed it to you, and that is much. It is much that I have made it correspond through my own gratuitous intellect and fists, superimposing creation onto nature. Do you find I am too full of myself? Perhaps, but better this I say than what the others would have you swallow. I need you, follow you, wake with you, yet am not there beside you. My heartbeats rouse you, my appetite makes you thirst. I move in you, sicken you, vex and exhaust you, yet despite this, you welcome me, you build me up, you hold me long enough in you. It is empty in the church now. The organ that mesmerized plays no more, and the candles the tourists lit seed to dark. The overdose smiles to himself on the staircase, his body still, his breathing slow. Spring's publicity, winter's secret heaven, to have seen the edge of paradise, and then just disappear. Icelandic moss and gelatin and miles of blinding asphalt. A woman, a man and a boy, and over there a line of gannets. In another lifetime, perhaps, another time of year, and the tongues bloodied and the eyes put out, in angry minutes, in a frosted ditch, in the fungible shadows, impish collusions, in the calm of mildew, in heavenly snatch, in leafy ivy's intricate mess, inscape and up and over itself, in an emptying land, in a snow-kissed gulag, there where the fat man treads my boards, there where the hanged nymphs naked taunt me, to never be named, to never draw breath, slow and hate-filled like the golem, tripping contemptuous through the dawn, in death's delivery its unpacking spasm. Mother, grew me in her funny insides. A prism narrows the me from the millions, pairs and perfects me for what, if not for this? Here is liveliness, here our land. Evening holds me, uncertain in its arm, holds me uncertain, in warm, imperiled adieu. Spit it out. Whatever it is, whatever the word and its outlying myriad of things, incertitudes and suggestions is, will happen. Bleached, austral dawn, and 100 white, impassable sailors piss and shave, shore leaves brief horror washed away forever. When the skittish wind grips you with its carnival order, or unbid obscurity newly descends, odours of silex, of liminal cunt, or when the spider on its web of breath waits all night while humans talk with millennial sorrow, wattles akimbo, jowls wet and glabrous, wiping their brows with cow-flecked fingers, weak for bullion, weak for gold, weak for that which makes believe, which makes whatever was changeable less. When the bow wastes and breaks, and the hard, unlovely virgins seed, undone the decade, undone their refusal, a blank-eyed skipper and his crew are ballast and antipodes to this weird, unsettling mess. What is normal weather anyway, given where the seasons went? Within the withered, dystopic bower, where the sprawling weeds grow bullish, water alone is wealth. Water without which our money, worthless, swells, determines whatever intrinsically counts. We cannot own what is unequal to our eyes, that are themselves twinned, damp, collateral. Pearls of fluid puzzling out the pulsing world's liquidity, parts of each person's better imagining, leaching into us whenever we touch, making each essence convergent with many. Flophouse of contact, brothel of heart, nodes where the vagabond others merge, heaped in community, herded in dream, slotted together like wisdom on the shelf, like minds synchronic and curious synapse, or that carcass of poultry simmered and blending, bouillon of vanishing inputs and stops. It is not an agreeable hymn I sing. Atonal music, heavy words in stiffly contrapuntal nets of time. If this simultaneity makes you puke, I couldn't care. If this book is panned, that won't matter much to me. The only thing that matters terribly is idiom, which meets and wrangles with an overwritten dense polysemy to rejig language. It is autochthonous, inspired, full of ideas, of bollocks. My pecker is tetchy, the salad impeccable. In Minneapolis, the summer roses huddle and bloom. Ho, ho, ho's and bless you, happy festive clap. Hope is just hunger dressed as holy lamb. Abstention and patience, trite, impotent crap. Appetite torments and exists to be outrun. To pray that the longed-for desserts arrive is hokum. If the biscuits have no leaven, it needn't mean it is mass. The weeks reiterate. The gathering empties align like schoolboys in my kitchen. More makes more. I stay unshaven. The shadow turns hairy. The bristles into beard. Effortless. Terrible. Fair enough. Is it appetite pushing these fleecy wires? Or is there something previous defining the shape that appetite itself inhabits, coaxing lust into its million apparitions, inclining us all towards ends? Are all the instances of life taken together unanimous? The same shop where she gets the baby lotion, they have another aisle that's stacked high with dildos. Never has so much impinged upon so nervous a crescendo, the undone and the unsaid too, the thought and forgotten, rawness, nudity, primitive timbre, the tremor that from nothingness makes it up, lazily spews its narrative because it can, it does. 9 toadstools on a stump concur, 12 pimples on a throat. Not at all sorry, in fact, and not at all clever. These things are simply themselves and sit out their time, laying claim to nothing beyond a piece of sky that corresponds to their own discrete dimension. Waking, turgid, skewy, perfect, with gaping mouth and profligate limbs, light from the outside overlays me. How many ways we lie as we tickle ourselves with what the thunder said. Most books are worthless, written by bums or by a professor. Only the ones that are better than food fire me up. The rest are wank. The things I said that hurt you, I guess they were lies too, or else the kind of truth that only autists value, truth uncut and absolute, and smaller in meaning than a well-meant lie. Now that the sun which woke me is setting, other suns will come. Other planets will kiss my sheet. There is too much down now for me to stop. The stuff that stays unwritten never did excite me. To wait for daybreak is not to live. Once a thing set in motion halts, allow however long it takes the show to restart and find its sequel, and if it turns out to have stopped terminally, or that nearing completion the author got the willies, terrified of the hollow trough that greets any finished thing, tant pis. You can't go crying over unmilked teats. By the Sunday market, a rat is exploring, darting around among the stalls. Tomorrow, when the yuppies in the neighbourhood eat their daily biltong, some will find hair in their muffin and complain. Fuck such individuals that need to be insured against life's big mess. Need it be explained, now we are knee-deep, my dear, in this ongoing tract? A hair in a muffin is like hair on a bosom, implying enough is never enough. Stop all this talk. Get going if you want to make the bus. The driver is temperamental the night long. It will be a slow insomniac push across the plain. In the bus, crazies rock and simpletons chuckle. Incarcerated men in jumpsuits ogle each tit and township as eagerly as wide-eyed children Christmas. The itinerary is simple. Straight into the expectant dawn. Iowa, Nebraska, then veer towards LA, where the scum that wafts from Rotterdam beats and slaps against the shore. The bus proceeds, the convicts twitch, the dullards thumb their plastic jewjaws. Further you go, emptier it gets. Salt, desert, mountain, dirt. A time back, at another poet's birthday, while I served myself yesterday's old ragout, some idiotic poser with his wife arrived and saw I was alone. "You take a walk," he said, then offered me his arm. Over the grass to the folly we went, over the waves to colossal weather, to snow and blood, lakes abhorrent and dense with phosphate. Ice on the lintel, on the thick black drainpipe, ice on the sweltering compost heap. Each object's edge lies somewhere beyond where we think it. None knows, so none can tell you if island and shelf are one or one and two.
Rufo, follow that. Exactly as I mentioned already, the quarterly published by Sagging Meniscus Press. There's a website, just look for Exacting Clam online. And this, the latest edition published this week, is a Dada issue and includes a very handsome tribute to the late Ian Monk by Rufo. Now, you could be forgiven for not having heard the name of Ian Monk here, but he was an Englishman who worked and lived in France, a translator whose death was recorded with a full-page obituary in Le Monde. So perhaps less recognised, like many prophets in his own country, but a very moving tribute, beautifully realised. Now it's me. And my second book from Sagging Meniscus Press is called A Crumpled Swan. And I shall just gallop through the first 2 pages as a preamble to a reading by my good friend Stephanie Ellyne. It's a book of 50 essays about one short poem, which is about as niche as it gets. But it's good to have an understanding publisher who has no interest in profit. This is the introduction. Most of the essays in this book are prompted by one short poem by Abigail Parry, which we'll be reading and rereading together, line by line and sometimes word by word, under a magnifying lens. This approach will prompt some more general reflections on what poetry is and what it does and how it works and what it's for. I hope this is your idea of fun. It is mine. Not all of these essays are about this one poem. Some of them digress into aspects of poetry in general, and I hope that will be of interest to you. 2 of the essays are about me, because just as Abigail Parry's poem is in part about trauma and the aftermath of trauma, this book is my attempt to confront and understand the circumstances that made me into the kind of person who feels a need to write this kind of book. Writing this collection of essays involved a close reading of myself, which required a lot of critical introspection. This wasn't easy. An admission. Although I know a lot about poetry, I don't know what I like. And what I mean by that is that although I read a great deal of poetry and think about it a lot, and while poetry is at the heart of my cultural life and informs a lot of my thinking and feeling and behaviour, despite all of this, I have never yet managed to settle on much poetry that meets all of my needs and expectations as a reader. That's mainly because I'm both picky and fickle, my needs and expectations changing from one day to the next. But it's also because the pleasures and consolations I seek and sometimes find in poetry are fugitive, elusive, transient. I don't want to try your patience by banging on about the effect this particular poem has on me, although I will be doing quite a lot of that. But I'll also be sharing a lot of personal opinions based on a lifetime of reading and reflection, opinions which are entirely valid, but have no authority whatsoever. I don't expect you to agree with much of what I say, and I expect that our tastes are more likely to differ than coincide. Which is perfectly fine, because in a phrase sometimes attributed to Ezra Pound, when two people agree, one of them is unnecessary. When I said just now that I don't know what poetry I like, I should add that there are many, many poems, or fragments of poems, that I like very much. As an entirely random and admittedly whimsical example, take these 3 lines from Alice Oswald's poem Owl Village, which appeared in her first collection. I'm smiling because I know what's coming next. You may know it. At 8 o'clock, I opened the window to the woods, and an owl about the size of a vicar tumbled across in a boned gown. I'll read that again. At 8 o'clock, I opened the window. Everyone's a critic. At 8 o'clock, I opened the window to the woods, and an owl about the size of a vicar. An owl about the size of a vicar. Eh? At 8 o'clock, I opened the window to the woods, and an owl about the size of a vicar tumbled across in a boned gown. Nobody reading this will ever again see owls in quite the same light, or vicars. The boned gown is beautifully suggestive, even transgressive, harking back to the 19th century, while tumbled catches perfectly the unexpectedness of the moment. I recall my delight on first reading these lines, and I think of them whenever I see a vicar, or an owl, and at other times as well. And reading the lines, you can't see them, and that's a disadvantage. I like reading poetry, I don't like hearing poetry, but if you read the poems, the O's in certain words look like owl's eyes. The window to the woods, an owl across, a boned gown. They peer at you through the bush, as it were. The owl eyes of the O's in Alice Oswald's poem. Oswald is practically an anagram of owl, isn't it? Anyway. Another example, take these 4 words, just 4 words, which appear in a single line by the poet laureate Simon Armitage. Snow like water asleep. Snow like water asleep. What could be simpler than that, and yet to find a fresh take on snow after hundreds of years of poets writing about this stuff? That's a wonderful achievement, and it's a keeper. I've been thinking for years that I might one day write a book about poetry, or even about a particular poet, but could never settle on a way to go about it. So I felt a huge thrill of relief and recognition when I first read In the Dream of the Cold Restaurant by Abigail Parry, because it immediately prompted a succession of decisions that led directly to this book. I understood very little of the poem at first, but the deeper I dug, the more I discovered. The more I read, the more I found to admire. I'd like to share some of those discoveries with you. So before we go any further, let's hear the poem.
In the dream of the cold restaurant, the man with the buttonhole and broad lapels is folding and refolding a white napkin. Look, say his hands at intervals. A swan, a dancing girl, an intricate scale model of the Mom Library on Chancery Lane. The man adjusts his buttonhole and coughs as each one fails, precisely to entertain. A waitress intervenes, bringing 2 plates, fluted, plain, translucent, and quite empty. Such is the gaunt extravagance of dreams. That waitress, though, all elbows, wrists, and hips, A strip of exposed skin reveals a scar on the nub of bone that finishes the spine. No, not a scar, a burn. A full-blown wet rosette, just like the one you earned at 17 from a fuck on a nylon carpet. Not unlike this carpet here, lalling its beige hoops and braids around the table's feet. Meanwhile, on the mezzanine, someone lifts a book and reads the line, "He left his knee exposed and dreamed of traveling on a mail coach by night." Well, quite. When you offer up your plate, it turns beneath your hands to a crumpled swan. The man, of course, has gone. Such is the glib economy of dreams. So find a way to bear it, if you can. The man who folds and folds and cannot please. The cheap carpet, telling its idiot riddle. The girl who has not learned to move between compassion and contempt. But then, other people's dreams are very dull, as the waitress knows, with all the brutal certainty of being 17. And she's gone too. She'll pull this city to the ground before she'll take your plate, let alone your pity.
It still clobbers me, that poem. It's the most extraordinary thing to hear. For the first time, you may feel slightly disadvantaged, but you can read the full poem in A Crumpled Swan. The copy's available upstairs, along with Ship by Rufo Quintavalle, Melissa McCarthy's Metro, Groucho, Chico. I can never get the title right. It's such a wonderful book. So thank you, Stephanie, for reading that. I don't see here ungendered voices in poetry, and I can't imagine myself reading that poetry aloud to an audience. It just doesn't. It would be like reading Sylvia Plath. Doesn't work, does it? Doesn't work to do such a thing. So thank you, and thank you all. Now this brings us to something that's not on the advertised programme, but I'm delighted to welcome one of the two contributing editors of Exacting Clan who are with us this evening. Melissa is one, and the other is my good friend Jake Goldsmith, who's joined us from his home in Suffolk for the evening. Now,
I'm not standing.
If I can maybe bring the chair forward. Julian, the other chair, sorry. Up you go. Thanks. We're going to dispense with an interval because who needs intervals? This is urgent stuff. Oh, thank you.
4 buttocks, 2 chairs.
4 buttons, good, 2 chairs, amazing. So, Jake Goldsmith has published 3 collections of essays with Sagging Meniscus Press, and in doing so has redefined the discourse surrounding chronic illness and disability. He has cystic fibrosis and other conditions.
Yeah, laundry list.
Yes, let's avoid the organ recital at this stage. But he's very unwell. That's the first thing you say in the first book of essays. He's a brilliant writer, essayist. As I say, he's a contributing editor to Exacting Clan. And as if that wasn't enough, he's also the founder of something you may have heard of, I hope you have, called the Barbellion Prize. Not a sausage. Oh yes, Penny. The Barbellion Prize. Can you tell us something about that, Jake?
Well, I think it was late 2019. I was sort of audacious enough to think, why don't I create a book prize? There's so many of them, we need more, don't we? And I thought, okay, where's a gap in the market and what's sort of relevant to me? Okay, disabled writers. I mean, you think, okay, there's been small writing competitions for children, but not a prize for disabled writers or about literature about disability. And that's immediately sort of, or surprising and then, or not surprising at all. Do you think, well, you've got a long history of all the best philosophers and writers from Virginia Woolf, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, whoever the hell, who all had quite significant disabilities or chronic illnesses. But it's not a primary theme in literature. And there's often this idea that if you're viewing life through the scope of illness, that's somehow narrowing, or it's sort of parochial, or sort of just, it's not as lively and dense, when that's obviously nonsense. And you don't want to be some sort of fetishist, but then life viewed through the lens of illness and disability is, well, we need that representation. I don't like the word representation really, just because it's overused. It becomes a sort of buzzword cliche. We need to represent this. Okay. It's still, regardless of the cliche, it's something that's worth appreciating. So I somehow, I guess through online connections, the internet, I met you, various other writers, people in publishing, and managed to sort of jerry-rig a prize. And I knew sort of sustainably I can't do this on my own. I need sort of infrastructure behind it. You see other literary prizes, they have lists of rules and guidelines and the rest of it, and all sorts of logistics are all beyond me. And I'm lazy anyway, let alone now. So the prize existed sort of for 3 years with me doing most of the work, and was well received. And I think the least you can ask of a prize is that the people who win it or who are shortlisted gain just extra sales or appreciation and some sort of just gain something from it. And it's at least done that. The first year it went to Golem Girl by Reva Lira. She's a portrait artist with spina bifida in Chicago. She wrote a lovely memoir about her life. The second year, the winner was Lynn Buckle, What Willow Says, about a grandmother in Ireland and her deaf granddaughter and their struggles in communicating. And then the third year, it went to a self-published book by Letty McHugh, which is a book of hours, which was sort of a riff on the old Anglo-Saxon book of hours, but for her own purposes with, funny enough, with MS. And so the reason for naming it after WMP Barbellion is he's almost the platonic form of the sort of literature, or the sort of, this is a nice 1940s Penguin edition. This is probably one of the best diaries in English, if not the best diary written in English. He was around sort of before and after the First World War, and he didn't know about his MS diagnosis, because at the time they had slightly odd rules about disclosing diagnoses to patients. And he found out when he went to sign up to fight. But if there's a great description in a biography of Barbellion where if there's one person who could be said to have escaped Plato's cave, it's possibly him. He's at least in the top 5. He's a major minor figure, something you've said before. He didn't produce many works. He wasn't able to. But
in fact, if I may, at the time of its publication, it received a note from H.G. Wells, who was probably the most famous English language writer on the planet at the time. And in fact, many people thought Wells himself was the author, which did the book no harm in terms of sales, and was happily published before Barbellion's early death from MS. But it is the most fantastic, candid, brave, direct and memorable book. It lands hard, as they say these days. It's a really first-rate piece of writing. He's fearless, isn't he? In examining his own condition, his own plight.
Well, and he explores all of it. So he explores his confidence, but then also his fear of death and all the contradictions and all his disquiet. And
there are no bromides, no consolations. Really, it's not the sort of thing that perhaps plays so well these days when we make journeys to arrive at some wonderful destination. But it's the most wonderful book. I think it was seeing the Barbellion name that first intrigued me when we contacted one another about that time. I wanted to know more about the prize. which then had to go on to hiatus for health reasons. I don't know how he did it for 3 years, with nothing at the time, but we've now managed, thanks to a lot of hard, dedicated work, and Jake is leading this, to relaunch the prize on the 1st of November, wasn't it? Yes. There's a spanking new website, which is easily found, Barbellion, that's it, you'll get there. And there's a donation page where you click just once, and as if by magic, money is transferred from your own account into that of the prize to secure its future in the years to come, because there are a few more worthwhile endeavours. And it's odd to think there isn't something backed by the major publishing houses or by some other institution or some connection with the Goldsmiths College, for example, no connection at all, to promote writing by disabled authors about disability. There just isn't anything. There are niche prizes for specific practices, but nothing on this scale. So sorry, Jake, I'm hogging your limelight.
Well,
Would you like to say some more about that?
Well, yes, Gav Clark's here, and he contributed to the website, so I thank him a lot. I mean, when I first did the website, the original website, and there's just a nice template on the service you use, but I have no web design skills, so I just think, okay, keep it minimal, keep it simple, no flashy stuff, so it sort of passes at least mild scrutiny.
It looks good.
Yeah.
Thanks to Gav. And it will develop, expand and grow as the prize expands and grows. We want to extend it beyond one category to other categories, young writers, for example, poetry, prose, fiction, non-fiction, but that's for the future.
Well, I want the prize at least to be, that it can't just be an indulgent, narcissistic sort of thing that I do. It needs to be have some infrastructure and stuff in place behind it. I'm at least sort of the all-seeing producer, making sure it stays on track, spiritually or otherwise. But.
And the window for submissions opens next year, early next year. I don't think we've settled on the date, possibly the 1st of April, which all sorts of associations, or sooner. And it's free to enter. There are no charges, no overheads, and anyone can enter. Or it couldn't be simpler. There are virtually no rules governing submissions of it.
Well, yeah, there's published, self-published. I think for logistical reasons, we're in the Poetry Society, but no poetry. We did have poetry last time, but in the last few years. But eventionally, I think we'd want to have a separate poetry prize. And there is a disabled poets prize that exists in the UK. I think it's for unpublished writing, though. Some people have an issue of sort of judging fiction, non-fiction, all sorts of genres together. I'm okay throwing everything in the pot and seeing, but I think I'm not a poet and don't have the expertise, and so I think that deserves its own attention down the line.
And yes, that's exactly what the donations are coming towards, to ensuring the future of the prize and the expansion of the prize into various elements. And Jake is behind it. It would never have happened without him. He's been leading it throughout, and can only thank him most sincerely for creating something that's such a brilliant addition to the literary landscape. And a quick word about In Extremis, or In Extremis.
Yeah, so this was published September. It's at least, well, half of the essays in here, they're quite short. I've been published in Exacting Clam. They're not all about disability, I'm not on one though. They're about history, politics, philosophy, epistemology, Balthasar Gracian, technology, bookshelves, university and its decline, and eclectic, I guess.
Yeah. Eclectic and very, very bright. Among the brightest essayists I've ever come across. The most engaging and enjoyable. He writes so eloquently and directly and honestly about disability, but that's just one aspect of your practice. And it's great to see you moving outside, so to speak, your key skills and addressing other things. I know you have some forthcoming work which is very exciting about art and artists, but let's leave that for now.
Yes.
With thanks for joining us. Great to see you in London. Great to see you in person. So thank you very much. Thank you. so much. It's such a pleasure to know you. Next, loitering by doorway is someone who's very much at home in the Poetry Society because he is an acclaimed poet and a prolific poet, an outstanding poet. But he's here with his novelist's hat on because he joins that illustrious cohort of poets who have written novels. Say hey, Lewis. For one. Joe Morgan for another. I'm sure you can come up with many, many others, but he's written a novel, University of Bliss. It's a campus novel. He's also written monographs on Bassett Bunting and Michael Hoffman. And his most recent collection, I think, is Please Don't Bomb the Ghost of My Brother. Although, wasn't that succeeded by a...
The new and selected.
The new and selected
Yes,
poems
yes.
came after that, very recently. Of this novel, Ronan Hession, the Irish novelist, author of Leonard and Hungry Paul, which you might see on the telly these days, narrated by Julia Roberts, no less. Ronan Hession says that this is a knockout satire of a dystopian present and an inmate's revenge, a last laugh. Stunningly funny. So there you go. Julian Stannard.
Well, thank you. Well, it's great to be here. Is this going live to America? It's
going around the world, yeah.
Okay, so I work in university. I suspect some of you might work in university, or you have worked, or you've been to university, and I suppose I just thought, well, those are wonderful campus novels in the past. You know, that campus isn't there anymore. You know, David Lawrence, you know, the history man. It would have been fantastic to have worked in a university in that period. Now it's just awful. There's a little blow on the back, because I mean, obviously one thing I have noticed about reading from a novel, it's much more complicated than reading poetry. In poetry, you just pick up the poem and read it. Whilst a novel, I do have to do a little bit of, otherwise you don't know what I'm talking about. So this is a little bit on the back. It says, now in 2035, so it's a futuristic book. At the University of Bliss in the south of England, the dead hand of bureaucracy smothers all intellectual endeavour. An unashamedly corporate ideology holds sway, thinly veiled by ubiquitous rainbow washing and tokenistic gestures towards moral and spiritual values, the environment and mental well-being. Q for poets, Tristan Black and Harry Blink, and charming, if duplicitous, post-structuralist Humph Lacan to fight back. But is it too late to save the university? There we are. I could just stop there, right? So I'm just going to read this little bit. So obviously, there's a sense in which there are three sort of villains: the vice-chancellor, the pro-vice-chancellor, and the Dean of Discipline. And then of course we've got the people I just mentioned before who are sort of trying to push back against them. So here we meet the pro-vice-chancellor, who's also in charge of a church, which is called the Church of the Aubergine. The Reverend Lady Bishop, Imelda Well-Beloved, ambled around the campus with a Shih Tzu. The dog had been flown over from the factory in Tibet at great expense. There was a range of Shih Tzus available, but Imelda had gone for the luxury model. A top-of-the-range Shih Tzu could glow in the dark, as could its excrement, which the dog generously spread around the campus, far and wide, in small, illuminated packages. The student volunteer scheme encouraged students to become Shih Tzu poop scoopers, something for the CV, and they were incentivized by a zap which allowed them to use a high-tech poop nav ping pong bat which had the magnetic force to suck the excrement from a considerable distance and at great speed. Having shot through the air, the luminous crap hit the ping pong bat with a satisfying smack. The experience was heightened if a member of staff inadvertently stepped into the flight path. The bishop had a pooper scooper of her own, but she could never find it, buried as it was beneath a pile of Gnostic texts. Eric Smallbone, her Buddhist colleague, acting head of theology, found it difficult to disguise his mirth. The Shih Tzu was called Ethelred. Imelda had him neutered, which aligned with the university's non-binary policies. He would never be ready for procreation, but the removal of his testicles seemed to have activated his anal glands. Thus, Ethelred the Unready became Ethelred the Shitter, the university mascot, whose name could be conveniently shortened to Ethel. Imelda looked out of the window. It was snowing lightly, and the campus looked beautiful. If the temperature dropped any more, she'd get out those ear gloves, especially knitted for her Tibetan dog. They had a purple hue and matched her robe, as well as her short hair, which she liked to dye variously, often in the colours of a rainbow, but today was a purple day. Imelda was happy and worried. Happy her niece had gone to the trouble of knitting the ear gloves, but worried that the theological pulse at the university was throbbing less strongly than it should. It was her job as pro-vice-chancellor and proctor of the Church of the Aubergine to keep marketization in line with doctrinal beliefs. She wanted to be sure the new vice-chancellor was skilled enough in the art of duplicity to allow revenue streams to enrich the university without compromising spiritual values. Who didn't want to work for a well-endowed university? So that's just a little glimpse of the two important figures there. So they've just appointed the new Vice-Chancellor. Just read a bit, move it on a bit. We're still at the beginning of the book, it's page 22. Ah, goodness, it's exhausting, isn't it? I say, just, there's a poem, you just read it, and that's it. Okay. So now we've got a little chat between the Vice-Chancellor-to-be and the Pro-Vice-Chancellor. Just having a little chat before the new year starts. Tell me, and also the Vice-Chancellor's famous in university circles because she's written a book called Pure Reflectivity. That's the title of the book. Tell me, asked the Vice-Chancellor, are the staff docile? We've done a good number on them over the years, and your book is required reading. I prefer to use the term self-effacing. Docile and self-effacing seem an ideal combination, Gladys said. I'm big on compliance. I'd like a maximum employee compliance ratio. You'll certainly have Professor Leach, the Dean of Discipline, on your side, and the union has been more or less emasculated, said the bishop. Ethelred whimpered. I need everyone singing from the same hymn sheet. Gladys enjoyed throwing in a religious metaphor. We do like a sing-song in the chapel, the bishop said. Actually, you might be interested to know, I've written a few hymns myself. Any recalcitrant staff? Asked Gladys. A few older members of staff still have a quaint belief in the value of education. Why haven't you sacked them? They've been with us a long time. They're on the old contracts, Gladys, and they serve a purpose on open days. You can't go around sacking everyone. I made a good job of it when I was at the University of Great Expectations. We like to think we manage our staff, how can I put it, in a spiritually enabling way, the bishop said. They should be spiritually enabled to leave. Are there any staff members I should know about? Gladys asked. We do have our triumvirate of troublemakers, as I like to call them. A triumvirate? That's rather a lot, isn't it? Humph Lacan is French, or at least French when he wants to be, said Imelda. He's distantly related to Jacques Lacan. Who? Well, you know, that French intellectual, the mirror stage, etc. I'm happy to drink French wine, thought Gladys, but I don't want the university besmirched by European intellectuals. He's a bit of a linguistic terrorist, our Humph, continued the bishop. It obviously runs in the family. Gladys felt herself getting hot, bad enough having to think about aubergines. He has a thing about the signifier. He likes switching signs around. Professor Leach got quite worked up. He found Roxana Grogan trying on some experimental underwear in the ladies' lavatory, which had been until very recently the men's lavatory, if you catch my drift. I shouldn't really have told you, but anyway, he was so embarrassed he wanted to have Humph sacked, or rather, Enfroy. She pronounced his name with a French accent. But Lacan had won the International Leonora Carrington Prize at the Edinburgh Festival. He'd switched so many signs around, the capital was in meltdown. The police arrested him, but he said chaos was the point. It was a performance. The judges thought it cutting edge, and he was interviewed by the BBC on that special arts programme, the one hardly anyone watches. Senior management offered him a chair before they understood the implications. I see, said Gladys, appalled. All work, no play makes Jack a dull boy, said the bishop. Gladys said, nothing wrong with old-fashioned dullness. Imelda poured some more tea. There's a couple more you should keep your eye on. Tell me, Gladys said, getting out her notebook. Tristan Black and Harry Blink, both poets. They teach creative writing. Creative writing, she spluttered. Don't you mean creative shiting? That's the end of that.
You caught me on the hop, Howie, for time. I'm afraid so.
Yes, that's fine. Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I shall sit down. Great.
Well,
Yeah.
University of Bliss, copies available upstairs, and we will ritually deface them if you... That's okay. Which brings us finally, after what's been a really this evening, I hope you agree. It brings us to Philip Terry, who is a professor at the Department of Literature, Film and Theatre Studies at the University of Essex. I'm afraid the University of Bliss might seem much familiar terrain to you. But he's a translator, and a very distinguished one of, amongst others, Georges Perec and Raymond Queneau. And we come back around to Ian Monk again, Ian Monk, who seems to be a presence this evening, both through collaborations with Rufo and Philip's connection to Sagging Meniscus Press is, I hope I've got this right, he is the translator of Ian Monk's 14 by 14 or 14 times 14, is that the right title? He'll tell us more about him, so please welcome Philip Terry.
Thanks. Back to poetry. I'm usually reading my poetry, but I'm reading somebody else's poetry tonight. There's Ian Monk, who's been a presence tonight, and you've already heard about Ian, who died recently. And the book I translated that came out with Sagging Meniscus, as you say, David, is called 14 by 14. And it's the title is, why is it called 14 by 14? It's called 14 by 14 because it's full of sonnets. But if a sonnet is 14 lines long, each of 14 poems in Ian's book are sort of sequences of 14 sonnets. So 14 sonnets make one of the poems. And then there's a little poem between them. And then there's another 14 sonnets sort of matched together, and then a little poem between them. I'm going to read you some of the little poems between the very long sonnets because they take so long to read. I just found that last reading so amazing. My side is still splitting, so it's really difficult to concentrate on something else. But I recognise the environment. Yeah. So this is Ian Monk. This little book's not Sagging Meniscus. It came out before that, but these are in the Sagging Meniscus one, as well as the long poems. This one's called Into These. So these are the little poems that Ian puts between the big sonety things. I'll read you a few of those because they're short. Is this about right for me? You think? Yeah. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay. So I'll read some of these for about 10 minutes. Ian wrote these in French, and I've translated them into English. He's an English writer, but he wrote in French, mostly. This first one, love is sketched out. Love is sketched out here to see, like a finger telling the tale of a life, like a drunk before falling silent at last, like a stiff, like two stiffs, stretched out by the sea, knowing how at last our own fingers like drunks tell the tale of our lives. What starts up is life as a future stiff and a dancing cloud of drink stretched out by the sea, by our fingers knowing how at last. And the next one I want to read is Listen Out, which I was about to say is in English in the original, but it's sort of, as you'll see, it's a sort of mashup of English and French, so I didn't have to translate this one. I suppose I could have translated the French bits into English and the English bits into French, but that would have been slightly insane. In fact, I should have definitely have done that, but I'm just reading it as it appears in Ian's book. Listen out. Listen out. La parole est là, and we say ce qu'elle dit. Severant your tongue, stroking ce que ma langue caresse. I mean you, right now. Parle. Dis-moi your words, your you, quoi. Encore tickles a stream of consciousness, un gazouillement dans l'air this evening. Écoutez our words as we endormons l'un contre the other. You dream que je rêve dans ta langue. Me too. We say tout ça. Tu piges where we're at, and tu voles là où I can follow. I think as je vois le monde below, and I see le ciel au-dessous, and I say the words de l'air qui souffle between us, and we wake, toi et moi, percés like that, to life, sans mots. This next one is Alice Slips. It's the Alice from the Alice books. It's a kind of sestina really, but it's got some things going on at the beginnings of the lines, repeating as well as at the end. Alice Slips. Alice slips, zips her lip, then hides in a world, oh no, of your own. Yes, in a world of your own, where things metamorphose into lexicons. Or there you go, into banal graphing machines, like a rabbit out of a hole. So coming out of the hole, Alice no longer slips, but hides. There she is, look. In banal graphing machines, recounting a fate like your own, employing the simplest of lexicons, like a world of your own and all her things. There she is, Miss Liddell, amongst all these things. So coming out of her hole, deploying the simplest of lexicons where life, real life, hides, recounting a fate like you and your own around a table that's utterly banal. Around this table that's quite banal, there she is, this little, amongst all her earth things, the cups, the teapot, a voice that says, oh no. And from the bottom of your fate, of your whole, where does life, real life, hide? In a new glossary, in your lexicon. On a new glossary in your lexicon, the extraordinary becomes a banal cup or familiar cup, yes, where she hides Alice, the world, and all her things at the bottom of your fate and of your whole, her cups, her teapot, and that voice that says, oh no, in a world of your own, that in like manner metamorphoses lexicons, like a rabbit out of a hole. The extraordinary becomes suddenly banal, just like the world and all its cloud-capped things, the familiar cup, the place where you hide. Filthy time. Time is dead, like you, Dad, like you, Mum. Time is dead. Time is dead, like us, like you, beneath me, both of us spent, then suddenly like time, there we are, once more, ticking, like time, which begins to quicken. No, it doesn't quicken time, it's us who pass through time like ghosts who spend time stupidly not knowing what else to do with time. Time weighs us down. So what should we do with time? But kill it. Just checking the time. I'll just maybe do a couple more because we're running out of time, as that poem seemed to be suggesting. Okay, the Paris of Clouds. One more time, you want to? Maybe we'll stop there. We need to stop at 9, don't we? The Paris of Clouds. It's another Sistine thing. Water. Is there some here? Oh, yes. It's always good to have a sip of water when you're running out of time. Find a cigarette. The Paris of Clouds. The Paris of Clouds chases the clouds of a wager, of an apparent simplicity, while your wager at the bar piles up white, red and yellow, and words chatter on without end. Like an eternal city without end, the Paris among the clouds piles up white, red and yellow. You lose your love, you lose your wager in the conversation at the bar with an evident simplicity. It's so dense, this simplicity, like an eternal town without end, while during a conversation at the bar, the good Lord flies off into the clouds and you lose your bearings, you lose your wager in this light, pallid and yellow. And this glimmer, pallid and yellow, which is so dense, the simplicity depends on the relative odds, not just on the wager, on a possible existence without end. The good Lord flies off among the clouds from the other side of the bar, at the other end of the bar. The mouth in the mirror grins yellow, seems lost in the clouds, murmuring that all the simplicity of a non-existence without end depends on reasoned odds, not just on a wager. It chases the clouds of a wager, while your wager at the bar and your words chatter without end. The face in the mirror grins yellow, murmuring that all the simplicity vanishes, lost among these clouds. And just a tiny one to finish. And you. you, your voice, bewitches me, you see, like your fingers. And me, my body, bewitches you, I see, more than death. We linger, how we linger, one against the other, like two fingers. And me, my voice, spellbinds you, you see, like my fingers, and you, your body, spellbinds me, I see, far more than death. We linger, how we linger, one against the other, like two fingers cut off from reality. There we are, thanks.
Thank you so much, Philip, and thank you, if I may, Ian, Monk, for writing such extraordinary poetry. Thanks to all of those taking part this evening, to McCarthy and Stephanie Ellyne, to Rufo Quintavalle, Julian Stannard, there he is, and I think that's everyone. And Jake! Goldsmith, sorry, I've got most of the Jake Goldsmith. 3 takeaways.
And you, David.
Oh, thank you all for coming. 3 takeaways. 1, Sagging Meniscus Press. Look them up online. Have a look at their backlist. They publish some pretty good writers, some wonderful books, and it's a very good website. 2, Exacting Clam. Take you straight to the website. A lot of material that appears in published form and print form is also there, and the archive is there. And it's a formidable transatlantic journal. If you're not already aware of it, it's worth knowing about. And 3, after Sagging Meniscus Press and Exacting Clam, these are easily remembered. 3, Barbellion Prize. Please look at the website, donate if you possibly can. I can think of a few worthy causes, and you'll feel good about yourself for the rest of the year. So thank you again for coming.